September 7th, 1940. 4:56 in the afternoon. Wing Commander David Atcherley stands on the observation platform at RAF Hornchurch, binoculars raised, watching the eastern horizon. He's been a fighter pilot for 15 years, flown in 3 different wars, seen formations that made other men pale. What he sees now makes his hands grip the railing hard enough that his knuckles go white. The sky is turning black, not with clouds, with aircraft, hundreds of them, maybe more, stretching from horizon to horizon in a formation so vast it seems impossible, unreal, like something from a nightmare or a fever dream. Heinkel 111s in tight Vs, Dornier 17s in stepped layers. Above them, higher still, the glinting specks of Messerschmitt fighters, hundreds of them, riding shotgun for the bombers below. Behind him, a young flight lieutenant speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, how many?" Atcherley doesn't lower the binoculars. He doesn't trust his voice yet, because he's counting, running the numbers, and the numbers don't make sense. 50 aircraft per major formation, 20 formations visible, and more coming. Always more coming. "Get me fighter command," he says finally. Tell them everything we have is not going to be enough." The call goes through at 4:58 p.m. At RAF Bentley Priory in Harrow, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding receives the report standing in front of the operations room plotting table. The Women's Auxiliary Air Force plotters are already pushing markers across the map, each marker representing a squadron of enemy aircraft. Dowding has been preparing for this moment since Dunkirk, since France fell, since Britain stood alone. He knew the Germans would come. He knew they'd come in force. He didn't know they'd come like this. "Current estimate?" he asks, his voice steady, professional, betraying nothing. "Initial reports indicate 300 plus, sir, but the formations are still crossing the coast. The number is climbing." Dowding watches the markers multiply. 300 becomes 400, 400 becomes 500. The plotting table looks like it's developing a rash, a cancer, spreading across the map from the Thames estuary toward London. "Scramble everything," he says. "Every squadron, every available aircraft." He knows what this means. The RAF has been bleeding pilots for months, losing experienced men faster than they can train replacements. They've been fighting 2, sometimes 3 sorties a day, defending against smaller raids, wearing themselves down in a battle of attrition they're slowly losing. Now the Germans are forcing a decisive engagement. Now they're betting everything on one massive blow. The question is simple. Can Britain's fighter defenses hold against 1,000 aircraft in a single raid? Dowding doesn't know. Nobody knows. This has never been tried before. Never in history has an Air Force attempted an assault on this scale. At 5:15 p.m. as the first German bombers cross into British airspace, Winston Churchill is 65 miles away in central London, sitting in a small office beneath the Treasury building, the Cabinet War Rooms. Concrete walls 3 feet thick. Steel doors, air filtration systems, designed to survive a direct hit from anything the Germans can drop. He hates it here. Not the bunker itself. The security is necessary, the precautions sensible. What he hates is what it represents. Britain driven underground. Britain forced to hide. Britain waiting for the blow to fall. He's reading the latest intelligence reports when his military secretary, General Hastings Ismay, enters without knocking. The look on Ismay's face tells Churchill everything before a word is spoken. "How many?" Churchill asks. "Initial estimates suggest upwards of 1,000 aircraft, Prime Minister, the largest formation ever assembled in the history of aerial warfare." Churchill sets down the report slowly, carefully, as if it might shatter. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, he just sits there. Then he stands, reaching for his jacket, his hat, the walking stick he doesn't actually need but carries anyway because it projects the right image. "Where are you going, sir?" Ismay asks, though he already knows the answer. "To see it," Churchill says, "to see what they're doing to my city. Prime Minister, I must advise against—" "Your advice is noted and disregarded, General. Get me a car. Get me to the roof of the Air Ministry. I want to see what we're facing." This is Winston Churchill's nature, the thing that makes him both brilliant and maddening to work with. Other leaders would stay in the bunker, making decisions based on reports and radio transmissions, insulated from the reality unfolding above ground. Churchill needs to see. He needs to witness. He can't lead a nation through hell if he doesn't stand in the fire himself. At 5:43 p.m., as Churchill's car moves through London streets already starting to fill with people seeking shelter, RAF pilot officer Geoffrey Page is strapping into his Spitfire at RAF Kenley. He's 20 years old, been operational for 6 weeks, flown 14 sorties, scored 2 confirmed kills and 1 probable. His hands don't shake as he buckles the straps. They did once during his first week of combat, but they don't anymore. He's learned something in 6 weeks that some men never learn. Fear doesn't help. Thinking about the odds doesn't help. You fly, you fight, you land. Or you don't. Today feels different, though. The dispersal hut was silent as they walked to their aircraft. None of the usual banter, none of the forced jokes. Everyone had seen the raid warning. Everyone understood what 1,000+ meant. It meant the Germans weren't playing anymore. It meant they were going for a knockout blow. Page's squadron commander, a South African named Sailor Malan, had briefed them with brutal honesty. "They're coming in numbers we can't match. We'll be outnumbered 5-1, possibly worse. Concentrate on the bombers. Ignore the fighters if you can. Every bomber we stop is 50 civilians who get to live." The engine roars to life, that beautiful, terrifying Rolls-Royce Merlin sound that every British pilot knows like a heartbeat. Page runs through his checks: fuel, oil pressure, ammunition, oxygen. Everything green, everything ready. The radio crackles. "Red section, scramble. Vector 110, Angels 20, heavy bandits inbound Thames estuary." He's airborne 30 seconds later, climbing east into a sky that's starting to darken with more than just evening. The smoke is already visible, black columns rising from the docks, from the warehouses along the river. The Germans aren't bombing randomly. They're going for the industrial heart. Woolwich Arsenal, the Royal Docks, the gasworks at Beckton, the oil refineries at Thames Haven. Strategic targets, military logic. Except the people who work there, the people who live near them, they're not strategic, they're not military. They're dock workers and shop clerks and factory girls and children coming home from Saturday afternoon at the pictures. Page levels off at 20,000 feet and sees them. The formations are impossible, obscene in their scale. Wave after wave of bombers, stepped up from 10,000 to 18,000 feet, protected by fighters flying high above. He counts quickly. His squadron has 12 aircraft. The formation ahead has at least 200 bombers. "Red leader, Red 3, he transmits. "Visual on bandits, multiple formations. Christ, there's hundreds of them." "Acknowledged, Red 3. Line astern. We're going in. Pick your targets. Good luck, gentlemen." They dive. On the ground, in London's East End, 52-year-old dock worker Thomas Benson is walking home from his Saturday shift at the Surrey commercial docks when the sirens begin. He's heard air raid sirens before. They've been testing them for months, had a few false alarms, even had some actual raids, though nothing serious. A few bombs here and there. Property damage. Frightening, certainly, but manageable. The sound he hears now is different. It's not the sirens that make him stop walking. It's the other sound, underneath the sirens, growing louder. A deep, rhythmic thrumming, like distant thunder, except thunder doesn't stay constant, doesn't build in volume second by second until it fills the entire sky. Benson looks up. The sun is setting behind him, casting long shadows across the street, painting the buildings in gold and amber. Against that golden sky coming from the east, he sees the bombers. Dozens of them, hundreds of them. Formations so dense they look solid, like a vast dark curtain being drawn across the heavens. He's not a military man. Never served, bad lungs kept him out of the last war, and he's too old now for this one. But he knows bombs. He knows tonnage. He knows what one bomber can do. And he's looking at hundreds. A woman comes running out of a nearby shop, pulling 2 children behind her. "The shelter," she's saying, almost chanting it. "The shelter, the shelter, the shelter." Benson wants to run. Every instinct screams at him to find cover, to get underground, to hide. But he can't move. He stands there, neck craned back, watching the formations pass overhead, listening to that thunder grow louder, and he thinks, this is it. This is what it looks like when they try to break us. At 6:07 p.m., the first bombs fall. They hit the Surrey commercial docks, where Benson worked just an hour ago. 700 acres of timber yards, warehouses full of paper and rubber and rum and tea. The incendiary bombs land first, thousands of them, small magnesium devices that burst into flames hot enough to melt steel. Within minutes, the entire dock complex is burning. The timber catches first, oak and teak and mahogany from all over the empire, stacked in massive yards, seasoned dry by months in the London air. It goes up like matchsticks. Then the high-explosive bombs come. 500-pounders. 1,000-pounders. They don't just destroy buildings. They vaporize them. The blast waves shatter windows a mile away. The concussion knocks people off their feet blocks from the impact points. And the bombers keep coming. Wave after wave, separated by just enough time that each formation has clear bombing runs. They're not carpet bombing, not yet. They're hitting specific targets with devastating precision. The Royal Docks, Silvertown, West Ham, Woolwich, the industrial infrastructure of London's East End, all the warehouses and factories and railways that keep a city of 8 million people fed and supplied. High above, Geoffrey Page and Red Squadron dive into the formations, firing, breaking away, climbing back up, diving again. Page lines up behind a Dornier 17, closes to 200 yards, squeezes the trigger. His 8 machine guns roar, 900 rounds per minute per gun, tracers arcing across the sky. He sees hits, pieces flying off the bomber's wing, but it doesn't go down, doesn't even break formation. He's out of position now, vulnerable, and a Messerschmitt is on his tail. He breaks hard left, pulling G-forces that grey his vision, and the Me-109 overshoots. They're fighting for their lives up here, trading shots with an enemy that outnumbers them catastrophically. And they're barely making a dent. For every bomber they damage, 50 more get through. It's 6:40 p.m. when Churchill reaches the rooftop of the Air Ministry building. He emerges into noise and chaos, anti-aircraft guns firing from Hyde Park, searchlights stabbing up into the darkening sky, the constant drone of aircraft engines overhead. To the east, the entire horizon is burning. The docks, the warehouses, the residential neighborhoods that surround them, everything is on fire. The smoke column rises thousands of feet, a black pillar visible for 50 miles, lit from within by orange and red flames. General Ismay stands beside him, saying something about getting below, about the danger, but Churchill isn't listening. He's staring at the fires, at his city burning, at the bombers still visible overhead in the twilight, still dropping their loads, still turning London into an inferno. An aide approaches with an update. "Latest count from Fighter Command, sir. They estimate we've shot down 42 confirmed, possibly 60. But the raids are continuing. The Observer Corps reports at least 600 aircraft have already struck, with more formations still crossing the channel." Churchill nods slowly. He's doing the arithmetic in his head, the same calculation everyone's making. 42 shot down, maybe 60, out of 1,000. It's not enough. The Germans are accepting the losses, absorbing them, pressing on regardless. This isn't a probing raid. This isn't testing defenses. This is a strategic decision to overwhelm British fighter defenses through sheer numerical superiority, to deliver such a massive blow that the psychological impact alone might break British will to resist. Churchill understands this. He's read the intelligence reports, knows that Hitler and Goering are planning an invasion, that they need air superiority first, that they believe Britain can be terrorized into submission. He knows the logic, he knows the stakes. What he's seeing now, what he's witnessing from this rooftop as the sun sets and the fires rage and the bombers keep coming in their endless waves, is not an abstraction. It's not a briefing paper or a strategic assessment. It's reality. It's his city, his people, his nation under assault on a scale that defies comprehension. A young RAF officer approaches, salutes. "Prime Minister, Air Chief Marshal Dowding is on the telephone. He wishes to brief you on the situation." Churchill turns from the burning horizon. "Tell him I can see the situation perfectly well. Tell him—" He pauses, choosing his words carefully. "Tell him every pilot in the sky tonight is a hero. Tell him to keep fighting. Tell him we will never surrender." The officer salutes again and hurries away. Churchill remains on the rooftop, watching as full darkness falls, and the fires become even more visible, a vast orange glow consuming the eastern sky. Behind him, Ismay speaks quietly. "Prime Minister, we should get you to safety." "This is safety, General," Churchill replies, not turning. "This rooftop, this city, this island, this is all the safety Britain has. There's nowhere else to run." By 7:30 p.m., the scale of the disaster is becoming clear to everyone in London with eyes to see. The fires have spread beyond the docks, feeding on themselves, creating their own weather systems. The heat is so intense it generates winds. Firestorms that pull air inward at ground level and blast it upward in superheated columns. Buildings that aren't hit directly burst into flames from radiated heat. The firestorm is beginning to feed itself, to become independent of the bombs that started it. In the cabinet war rooms, the situation maps are being updated constantly. Each pin represents a bomb strike, each red zone represents fires. The map of East London is disappearing under markers. Churchill has returned from the rooftop, but he refuses to stay in the bunker. He's planning to visit the affected areas, to see the damage firsthand, to be seen by the people who are suffering. His staff is horrified. The raid is still ongoing, bombs are still falling, the fires make half the city impassable. Churchill doesn't care. "Get me a car," he says for the second time today. "I'm going to the docks." This time no one tries to stop him. They know it won't work. At 8:15 p.m., Churchill's armored car is moving through South London, heading toward the fire zone. The streets are chaos, fire brigades racing toward the flames, ambulances carrying wounded away from them, thousands of civilians stumbling through the smoke, carrying children, pulling carts loaded with whatever possessions they could save. The car has to stop repeatedly, waiting for the road to clear. Churchill sits in the back seat, cigar clenched between his teeth, watching the refugees stream past. These are his people, working-class Londoners. Dock workers and factory hands and shopkeepers. The people the newspapers don't write much about. The people the politicians forget except at election time. They're the ones burning tonight. They're the ones dying. The car reaches a police barrier. An officer approaches, recognizes the Prime Minister, snaps to attention. "Sir, I can't let you go further. The fires are—" "Out of control, yes, I can see that," Churchill interrupts. "Which is precisely why I need to see them. Step aside, Constable." The officer hesitates, then signals the barrier to be moved. The car proceeds another half-mile before the heat becomes too intense to continue. Churchill steps out. The heat hits him like a physical force. The air shimmers. The smoke is so thick it's hard to breathe. All around, buildings are burning. Not just burning, but melting, collapsing, dissolving into flame and ash. Fire crews are working desperately, dragging hoses, directing streams of water that seem to evaporate before they reach the flames. It's not enough. Nothing is enough. A fire brigade commander approaches, soot-blackened, exhausted. He doesn't salute. His hands are burned, wrapped in hasty bandages. Prime Minister, sir, we need more pumps, more water pressure. The mains are broken in half a dozen places. We're losing ground. What do you need? Churchill asks. Everything. Pumps from outside London. More crews. The fires are merging. We might lose the entire East End if we can't establish a fire break. Churchill nods. He turns to Ismay, who has followed him out of the car. Contact every fire brigade in the home counties. Get them here. Authorization from my office. Requisition anything necessary. Anything. He stays for 20 minutes, walking as close to the fires as the heat allows, talking to firefighters, to air raid, wardens, to civilians huddled in doorways, waiting for a chance to flee. He doesn't give speeches, he doesn't make pronouncements. He just listens, nods, occasionally asks questions. His presence matters more than his words. The Prime Minister is here, in the flames, not hiding, not running. As they drive back toward Whitehall, Ismay attempts to brief him on casualty estimates. Churchill raises a hand, stopping him. Not yet, he says quietly. I don't want to know yet. Tomorrow we'll count the cost. Tonight we focus on surviving. At 9:30 p.m., the Luftwaffe changes tactics. The bomber formations that have been hammering the docks for 4 hours begin to shift targets. Now they're hitting central London, Westminster, Bloomsbury, the City of London, Holborn. The attacks spread across the entire metropolitan area, no longer focused on industrial targets, but hitting residential neighborhoods, hospitals, schools. The strategic bombing has become indiscriminate. This is what Göring wants. This is the strategy behind the massive raid. Break the infrastructure first, the docks, the power stations, the railways. Then break the people, terrify them. Show them that nowhere is safe, that British defenses are inadequate, that resistance is futile. The problem with this strategy, the fatal flaw in Göring's logic, is that it assumes people react to terror rationally. It assumes that sufficient brutality will break morale, create panic, force capitulation. It doesn't account for rage. In a public shelter under Bethnal Green Station, Mary Hutchinson sits with her 2 children, listening to the bombs fall. She's 34, a widow. Her husband died at Dunkirk 3 months ago. She works at a munitions factory in Woolwich, assembling shell casings, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Tonight was supposed to be her evening off. The shelter is packed, maybe 300 people crammed into a space designed for half that. It smells of sweat and fear and the chemical toilets in the corner that stopped working properly hours ago. Every time a bomb falls nearby, the lights flicker. Dust sifts down from the ceiling. Children cry. Someone near the back is praying loudly, cycling through the same prayer over and over. Mary's daughter, 8 years old, looks up at her. Mum, are we going to die? Mary wants to lie, to offer comfort, but she's never lied to her children. I don't know, love, but we're going to be very brave, whatever happens. Another bomb, closer this time. The lights go out completely for 5 seconds that feel like 5 years. When they flicker back on, Mary sees the fear in every face around her, but she also sees something else. Determination. Anger. A woman across from her catches her eye and nods. A small gesture, barely visible. But it says everything. We're still here. We're still alive. They haven't beaten us yet. This is what the Germans don't understand about bombing cities. Every bomb that falls creates more refugees, more casualties, more devastation. It also creates more witnesses, more survivors, more people who will remember this night for the rest of their lives, who will carry this rage and determination through whatever comes next. You can't terrorize a nation into surrender when terror produces rage instead of fear. At 10:45 p.m., Geoffrey Page's Spitfire limps back to RAF Kenley. He's out of ammunition, low on fuel, and his aircraft has taken hits. Cannon shells punched through his wing, punctured a fuel tank, damaged his rudder controls. He makes the landing on reflexes and luck, touching down hard, the aircraft pulling left, but he gets it stopped. He climbs out, legs shaking now that the adrenaline is fading, and looks east. The glow is visible from here, 40 miles from London. The entire sky is orange and red, lit from below by fires so massive they're creating their own light. It looks like the end of the world. The squadron intelligence officer meets him with a clipboard, ready to debrief, to record kills and damage assessments. Page just stares at him. "How many?" the officer asks. "How many what? How many did I shoot at?" "Dozens." "How many did I hit?" "Maybe 10. "How many went down?" "I saw one." "Maybe 2. He laughs, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "There were hundreds of them, hundreds. We might have stopped 50. The rest got through." "The squadron performed admirably, Page. Don't think. I'm not thinking. That's the problem. If I think about it, if I think about what's happening to London right now, I won't be able to climb back in that cockpit tomorrow." The officer nods slowly. "Get some food. Get some sleep. We scramble again at dawn." Page walks toward the mess, peels off his flight jacket, sits at a table. Other pilots are filtering in, exhausted, silent. Nobody's celebrating. There's nothing to celebrate. They fought bravely, flew well, did everything right. And they lost. Not in the air. The RAF fighters maintained better than 1-1 kill ratios even with the numerical disadvantage. But strategically, tactically, they lost. The bombs fell. The city burns. The mission, the fundamental mission of Fighter Command, to protect Britain from aerial attack, failed tonight. At 11:30 p.m., the last wave of German bombers turns for home. They've been attacking for nearly 6 hours. They've dropped over 300 tons of high-explosive bombs and thousands of incendiary devices. They've killed hundreds, wounded thousands, made tens of thousands homeless. They've started fires that will burn for 3 days. They've damaged or destroyed infrastructure that will take months, perhaps years, to repair. And they've lost 72 aircraft. This is the complication, the twist that changes everything, not for Britain, for Germany. In Berlin, Goering receives the initial damage reports with satisfaction. The raid was massive, devastating, unprecedented. London is burning. Surely this will break British morale, force Churchill to negotiate, pave the way for Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain. But then the loss reports come in. 72 aircraft, over 400 aircrew killed, wounded or captured. Nearly 10% of the attacking force. Goering does the math immediately. He has approximately 2,500 operational bombers and fighters. If losses continue at this rate, his air force will be crippled within weeks. The invasion requires air superiority. Air superiority requires destroying RAF Fighter Command. But Fighter Command isn't destroyed. It's bloodied, stretched thin, but still fighting, still killing German aircraft at rates the Luftwaffe can't sustain indefinitely. The strategic calculus has changed. The massive raid was supposed to break British resistance. Instead, it's revealed the limitations of strategic bombing. You can devastate a city. You can kill thousands. But you can't force surrender through bombing alone, not when the target nation has the will to resist, not when they have fighters still in the sky, not when their leader stands in the flames and refuses to yield. Back in London, Churchill understands this instinctively before any intelligence reports confirm it. He's back in the cabinet war rooms now, past midnight, reviewing damage reports, casualty estimates, infrastructure assessments. The news is horrific. At least 430 civilians dead, over 600 seriously wounded, vast sections of East London in ruins. The fire's still burning out of control. But Britain is still fighting. The government still functions. The military still operates. The people, despite everything, are not broken. Churchill's private secretary enters with the latest reports from Fighter Command. 72 German aircraft confirmed destroyed, possibly more. Churchill reads the report twice, then sets it down carefully. Get me a telephone connection to President Roosevelt, he says. It's a bold request. Transatlantic telephone calls are difficult, expensive, usually reserved for scheduled times. But Churchill needs to speak to the American president. Needs Roosevelt to understand what's happening here. Needs America to see that Britain is not collapsing, not surrendering, but fighting. The call connects at 1:15 a.m. London time, 8:15 p.m. in Washington. Roosevelt's voice crackles across the thousands of miles of underwater cable. Winston, are you all right? We've heard reports about the bombing. We've had quite an evening, Mr. President, Churchill replies, his voice steady despite the exhaustion. The Germans sent everything they have. 1,000 aircraft, perhaps more. The largest air raid in history. There's a pause on the line. My God, the casualties are significant. The damage is extensive, but we are still here. We are still fighting, and we shot down 72 of their aircraft. Another pause. Churchill can almost hear Roosevelt calculating, understanding the implications. That's unsustainable for them, Roosevelt says slowly. At those loss rates? Precisely. They can destroy our cities, Mr. President. They can kill our people, but they cannot break our will, and they cannot do this indefinitely without destroying their air force in the process. What do you need, Winston? This is the question Churchill has been waiting for. Not sympathy, not condolences, action. Aircraft, destroyers, arms, ammunition, time. We can hold them, Mr. President, but we need American industry behind us. We need the arsenal of democracy. We need you. Roosevelt is silent for a long moment. Churchill knows what he's thinking. America is neutral. American public opinion is isolationist. Roosevelt wants to help, but is constrained by political reality, by Congress, by an electorate that watched European nations tear themselves apart twice in 30 years, and has no desire to join the slaughter again. I'll do what I can, Roosevelt says finally. The Destroyers for Bases agreement is already in motion. I'm working on Lend-Lease. It's not enough, I know, but it's what's politically possible right now. It may have to be enough, Churchill replies. For now. But, Mr. President, I must ask you to consider something. Tonight, Germany attempted to terror bomb Britain into submission. They failed. But this will not be the last raid. There will be more nights like this. Many more. The question facing your nation is simple. Will you wait until Britain falls and then face the Nazis alone, or will you help us now, while we're still standing? I understand what you're asking, Winston. I'm not asking. I'm stating facts. If Britain falls, if the Royal Navy falls into Hitler's hands, if the British Empire's resources become Nazi resources, America will face a world where democracy exists only on your side of the Atlantic. You'll be alone, surrounded by fascist powers. Is that a risk you're willing to take? Roosevelt doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is firm. Give them hell, Winston. Hold the line. I'll do everything in my power to help you. Everything. That's all I can ask. Thank you, Mr. President. Churchill hangs up the phone. He sits for a moment, cigar burned down to ash, staring at nothing. Then he stands, straightens his jacket, and walks toward the main briefing room where his war cabinet is waiting. At 2:30 a.m., with fires still raging across London, Churchill stands before his advisers. They're exhausted, traumatized, some of them arguing for evacuation of the government to safer locations, others suggesting opening negotiations through neutral intermediaries. Churchill listens to the arguments without interrupting. Then he speaks. Gentlemen, tonight the German Luftwaffe attempted to destroy London. They dropped hundreds of tons of bombs. They killed hundreds of our people. They burned vast sections of our city, and they failed. Someone starts to object. How can this be called failure? Churchill raises a hand. They failed because their objective was not to destroy buildings or kill civilians. Their objective was to break our will, to force us to surrender, to terror bomb us into submission. In this objective, They have utterly and completely failed. He pauses, letting the words sink in. I have tonight spoken with President Roosevelt. I have tonight walked through burning streets and seen our people's faces. I have tonight watched from the rooftops as German bombs fell on British soil. And I will tell you what I learned. We are not broken. We are bloodied, yes. We are hurt, yes. But we are not broken. The German High Command made a fatal error tonight. They believed that sufficient brutality would create fear. They forgot that brutality also creates rage. Churchill walks to the map table, looks at the pins marking damage, casualties, fires. The Germans can bomb us every night for a year. They can destroy every building in London. They can kill tens of thousands, and we will still be here. We will still be fighting, because we have nowhere else to go. Because this is our home. Because surrender is not an option. Because defeat is not an outcome we will accept. He turns back to face them. Tonight was terrible. Tomorrow will be difficult. The days ahead will test us in ways we cannot imagine. But we will endure. We will rebuild. We will fight on. And in the end, we will win. Not because we're stronger than the Germans, not because we have more resources or better technology, but because we will not quit. Ever. The room is silent. Then, one by one, the men around the table nod. The argument about evacuation dies. The talk of negotiation ends. There's nothing left to say. At 4 a.m., as dawn begins to break over London, Churchill finally allows himself to rest. He doesn't sleep. Won't sleep, can't sleep with the fire still burning, with rescue crews still pulling bodies from rubble. But he sits, cigar in hand, staring at the wall of his office in the war rooms, processing the night that just passed. The numbers are becoming clear now. Over 430 dead, closer to 2,000 wounded. 40,000 people made homeless in a single night. The Surrey commercial docks completely destroyed. Railway lines severed, roads cratered, water mains shattered, power systems damaged. And this is just the first raid. The Germans will come back. They'll come back tonight, tomorrow night, every night until something breaks. Churchill understands what's coming. Weeks of nightly raids. Months, perhaps. A sustained campaign of terror bombing designed to break British morale and pave the way for invasion. The Germans believe they can do to London what they did to Warsaw and Rotterdam, bomb a city until it surrenders. They're wrong, but that doesn't make the coming ordeal any less terrible. A young aide enters, bearing a tray, tea, toast, the morning newspapers already printing despite the chaos. Churchill glances at the headlines, unsurprised by their patriotic defiance. The press knows what to say, what the nation needs to hear, but Churchill also knows what the newspapers can't print, can't say. This is going to get worse, much worse, before it gets better. Later that morning at 9 a.m., Churchill visits the bombed areas in daylight. The fires are still burning, but controlled now. Vast sections of London reduced to smoking ruins. Rescue crews are working methodically, pulling survivors from collapsed buildings, recovering bodies from the rubble. Thousands of people are sitting in the streets, dazed, homeless, everything they owned destroyed. Churchill walks among them. He doesn't give speeches, doesn't make pronouncements. He shakes hands, accepts cups of tea from women brewing them on portable stoves amid the ruins, talks quietly with children whose homes no longer exist. A man approaches him, Tom Benson, the dock worker who watched the first formations arrive. His face is soot-blackened, his clothes torn. "Prime Minister, they got my house. My wife and I, we were in the shelter. We're alive. But the house, it's gone. Everything's gone." Churchill looks at him, sees the exhaustion, the shock, the anger. "I'm sorry," he says simply. "I wish I could tell you this won't happen again, but it will. The Germans will come back. Perhaps tonight. Perhaps every night." Benson nods slowly. "We know. We'll manage. We'll find somewhere to stay. Rebuild somehow. But, Prime Minister, You make sure we hit them back. You make sure Germany pays for this. I intend to, Churchill replies. I promise you that. He means it. Already his mind is calculating revenge. Bomber command is small now, ineffective compared to the Luftwaffe. But it will grow. Britain will build more bombers, train more crews, develop better navigation systems and bombing techniques. And when the time comes, when Britain has the capacity, Germany will learn what it means to sow the wind. Winston Churchill died in 1965, never living to see the final judgment of history on his wartime leadership. But on his desk when he died was a photograph from September 8, 1940. Churchill standing in the ruins of London's East End, surrounded by bombed-out buildings and homeless civilians, his face set in that characteristic bulldog expression of defiant determination. Underneath the photo, in his own handwriting, was a single sentence. This was when we knew. He never explained what we knew, whether it meant knowing Britain would survive, or knowing the cost of survival, or simply knowing that the choice had been made and there was no turning back. Perhaps it meant all of those things. Perhaps in that moment, standing in the ruins of his burning city, Churchill understood something fundamental about human nature and national character that the Germans never grasped. You cannot bomb courage out of people. You cannot terrorize determination into submission. You can destroy buildings, kill thousands, reduce cities to ash. But if the people refuse to accept defeat, if they choose to stand despite the cost, if they keep fighting no matter what, then all the bombs in the world won't break. Them. That's what Churchill knew on September the 7th, 1940, watching from a rooftop as London burned. That's what Britain proved over the next 5 years. That's the answer to the question posed at the beginning. What did Churchill say when 1,000 Luftwaffe bombers hit London in a single night? He said, "We will never surrender." And he meant it.